My name is Allison Bacon, and I am honored to be here tonight supporting the Epilepsy Foundation of Georgia. I'm here tonight to share my journey as a parent of a child with epilepsy. This is so much more than just my journey as a parent. It's about the influences that have made a life-changing impact on so many more lives than just the mom you see in front of you tonight. My oldest daughter, Kaitlyn, was born close to Christmas in 2006. I was a first-time mom, adjusting to a new job in a new city. I loved being a new mom. This precious little life looking back at me smiling, wrapping her fingers around mine. I loved bath time, her bedtime routine, hair bows and cute dresses, those infectious baby laughs. But after a few months, it was hard to ignore the subtle jerks that Kaitlyn was having. At her 9-month checkup, her pediatrician recommended an EEG to rule out seizure activity. I'll never forget the phone call after returning home that night. Kaitlyn was having seizures. And so it began. The doctor's appointments, the tests, the blood work, the inconclusive genetic tests, the follow-ups, the bills, the insurance, and the medication. My heart ached for my precious girl. I felt like every dream I had for my daughter vanished that day. But I didn't have a moment to be lost in my sadness. I had to be present. I had to absorb every ounce of feedback from her doctors. I had to keep my family and my friends up to date. I had to be prepared for whatever was next. Not to mention I had to process this massive new vocabulary I had. On top of it all, I had to continue to be a mom. After ruling out a vitamin deficiency, Kaitlyn began her first anti-seizure drug, phenobarbital. At this point, Kaitlyn was only having myoclonic seizures, short, jerking episodes. At the request of her doctors, her seizures were journaled daily. Well, that didn't last long. There were too many to count. The weight of worry began to set in. It was already hard enough to medicate your child every day. How long if it doesn't? What are the long-term effects? There were so many unknowns, too many to dwell on them. These are the moments that you rely on faith, the strength of your family, and the sheer willpower to move on. After several months of no improvement, a second drug was added to Kaitlyn's medication regime. Sonogram. The thought of adding another medication was so heavy. Kaitlyn had just turned 1, but this time, the second medication would be worth it. It was also in this moment I began to feel like a chemist. Phenobarbital was easy, a liquid in a syringe. Sonogram was in a capsule, but Kaitlyn was unable to swallow capsules. So I had to open and dissolve every single capsule. And God help the poor CVS pharmacist who gave me the generic, because it didn't dissolve in water. He's now my new best friend. But several months went by and Kaitlyn's seizure activity began to improve, and it was a miracle. Her doctors recommended weaning her off of phenobarbital to see if Sonogram would be successful on its own, and that was a move I was thrilled to make. The next period of time was a blur of sorts. On the bright side, the medication was working, and Kaitlyn began to have less and less episodes. However, she started missing developmental milestones. She started experiencing problems with her ears. As her delays were surfacing, Kaitlyn was diagnosed with low muscle tone, a submucous cleft palate, and you could really begin to see the differences between her and her typical peers. I had just lost a pregnancy, and the weight of Kaitlyn's challenges became heavier and heavier. But one thing that kept me going was this sweet girl's smile. It never left her face. During doctor's visits, physical therapy appointments, or even surgeries, nothing could stop her from smiling. As her seizure activity was really slowing down, she was learning to walk. She had a new baby sister, Brooke, and life was in full swing. And on the bright side of chaos, she'd approached a new milestone, 1 year seizure-free. Her doctors gave us directions to take her off Sonogram. After a 3-month process, she was medication-free. It was like taking the deepest breath of the cleanest fresh air. A beautiful new normal was starting. 6 weeks later, everything would change. In September 2009, Atlanta was experiencing flooding that would cut off the water supply to our house. The highway was on the verge of flooding and cutting off access to the city. We packed up Kaitlyn and baby Brooke, and we started to make way for my mom's house. Brooke slept in her pack and play, and I shared a bed with Kaitlyn that night. At 5 a.m., I woke up to Kaitlyn seizing next to me. She was having her first grand mal seizure. This was not something I was ever prepared for. Just seeing your child so helpless. The only silver lining I could find was that by the grace of God, I was next to Kaitlyn that night, that morning. If I wasn't by her side, I may not have known what had happened to her. Kaitlyn was promptly back on her medication. I'll never forget how discouraged, much like the day she was diagnosed. This was our new normal. It's in this rock bottom moment that something magical was about to begin. About 8 months later, I vaguely remember seeing an ad for the Epilepsy Foundation of Georgia's Magnolia Run, and I felt a subtle urge to sign up, but it wasn't easy to sign up. Participating meant that I was publicly acknowledging something was different with my daughter, but I didn't go alone. The foundation offered a 1-mile walk that you can participate as a team to coincide with the 5K run. Kaitlyn and I signed up with my mom and a friend. In 2010, Team Katie Cakes was born. The 4 of us walked one very hot mile in June. The event itself was great, but it felt like the first day of school for me. I felt shy. I wanted to keep it to myself. I probably didn't want to burst into tears. I was holding so much of the last 2 years inside me. At the event, I was making my way towards the parking lot with Kaitlyn when I was stopped by a mother and her son who was probably no more than 4. And she asked me why I was at the race. And I said I was there for my daughter, Kaitlyn. She asked me more questions. Her son was diagnosed just 2 weeks before. I was in awe. 2 weeks. It took me 2 years to publicly participate, and there she was 2 weeks after diagnosis. We talked about medications, seizure types, and Kaitlyn's general quality of life. I'll never forget the look in her eyes, a sense of relief, a sense of belonging, and a sense of hope as she said thank you. Who knew that sharing Kaitlyn's experiences would help someone else? It was in that moment that I knew we would be back every year. And we came back every year. And every year we grew. The next year, Team Katie Cakes was 7 people, and then 30, and then 70. We made team shirts with a little blonde superhero on them, purple awareness bracelets that said, I can do anything. Before we know it, there were 100 people walking with Team Katie Cakes. The number of children that participated were overwhelming. Nearly a third of our team was children each year, and they loved walking with Kaitlyn. I want to take a moment to tell you about Avery. She's one of Kaitlyn's dear friends who's walked with us every year since 2012. One year, she didn't tell her parents that she was saving money all year. The morning of the Magnolia Run, she announced to her parents that she wanted to donate every dollar that she'd saved that year. It's about $200. She wanted to donate it to the foundation in Kaitlyn's name. Her parents were so surprised, they matched the donation. Team Katie Cakes was equally honored, and we matched that gift as well. Avery's generous gift of $200 turned into an $800 gift. We were blown away by the kindness and the generous gesture of one of the Team Katie Cakes' youngest members. I could see the impact that Team Katie Cakes was having on younger children. My next plan was to take Team Katie Cakes into elementary schools. I wanted Kaitlyn to feel like everyone around her was a friend and a safe place. With the help of the resources from the foundation, I spent time in kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms talking about epilepsy facts and seizure first aid, and sharing Team Katie Cakes' message that no matter what challenges you have, you can do anything. During this time, Kaitlyn was experiencing grand mal seizures a few times a year. There were, however, some bright spots. I'll never forget them. You don't always realize how your other children are impacted by watching their sibling go through challenges, but Brooke was always a helper and never left Kaitlyn's side. After one grand mal seizure, my knee-jerk reaction was to call 911. Have Kaitlyn's vitals checked and all of that. She wasn't conscious at the time, but EMS talked Kaitlyn through every step of their care. Kaitlyn, my name is Chad. I'm going to take your blood pressure and listen to your heart rate. Everything is fine. Everything turned out great, and I dismissed the ambulance. But after the EMS left and they settled down, Brooke, my daughter 4 at the time, came up to me and said, "Mom, do you know he was a doctor and a fireman?" How does that happen? And Brooke has loved firemen ever since, right, Brooke? Another experience that I'll never forget was when Kaitlyn was 6. I was kneeling by her side as she was regaining consciousness and after a seizure, and her words will stay with me forever. "Mom, I heard you say I love you, and I couldn't say it back."
Oh my God.
This was such a lesson to me. Don't freak out. Stay calm. She can hear you when she's seizing. And so we did. We kept calm and we carried on. We had so many things to look forward to. Kaitlyn had a new little sister, Corey, and the Magnolia Run was an absolute highlight to look forward to every year. By 2017, over 200 people woke up before the sun and walked with us. Among those 200 people were people from every aspect of her life: her parents, her sisters, her aunts and uncles, her grandparents, her great-grandparents, all of which are with her tonight, her special needs bus driver, her teachers, her neighbors, her friends, even her friends of friends showed up to walk with her. They were all wearing her shirts, cheering her on, and you can see why this is Kaitlyn's favorite day of the year. At the end of each race, it's an overwhelming feeling of love and acceptance that Kaitlyn wasn't alone. She would never be alone. This was such a therapeutic event for me too. That shy mom just a few years ago, the Magnolia Run was so much more than participation and raising money for the foundation. It became a platform for awareness and acceptance. We are only 1 in 26 impacted by epilepsy. If it wasn't for the programs that the foundation provides, there would be no Team Katie Cakes. I don't know where I would be today as a mom, and I don't know where Kaitlyn would be without the foundation. Today, Kaitlyn is 6 years seizure-free. She is over 1 year medication-free, but our work isn't done. Your continued support of the programs that the foundation provides provide a place for parents like me to find strength in our vulnerabilities. They provide people like Kaitlyn a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and a sense of hope. Thank you for continuing your incredible support of this foundation that touches the lives of those living with epilepsy in more ways than you can ever imagine. So, thank you.
Ha ha ha.